What's good, everybody? Old Papa G here, and I got some more Shadowlands content coming for you guys. This video in particular, I've got a lot of comments in my last video. I know a lot of people wanted me to make an updated video, and today is finally the day. I'm going to finally do it. We're strictly focusing on RBGs in this tier list. For me personally, I play more BGs than I do anything else. I play BGs way more than I do Arena. So I figured this is definitely the best time to drop it. I really rarely see any information on RBGs in general, so I do enjoy making videos where I feel like the content is definitely needed. So this is the time for me to do it after the big patch updates, and a lot of classes have went up and down and all over the place, especially since the beta, which was my last video for this. So I figured this was the time to do it. I just want to start off, as you can see on the bottom. I have an unranked and not included list. Now, here I'm not saying that any of these specs in particular are bad. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. I personally don't see these specs a lot in RBGs and or Arena. Really, for the most part, I rarely see them. Some I do more than others. So, for example, I do actually see Survival Hunter in Arena, but I never see them in RBGs. And it's the same thing with Arcane Mage. I do actually see them in Arena, but I never see them in RBGs. Now, for the rest of these, like Fury Warrior, BM Hunter, Demonology Warlock, Outlaw, and Assassination Rogue, I really, for the most part, I never ever see them. So I don't want to give information on something that I don't really know about. But for the most part, at least in terms of Arena, all of these are either in the D or the C tier. This is for RBGs. I never see these, so I don't want to give anything that is inaccurate or wrong. But for the most part, from my feeling of it, they're probably all in the C or the D tier, and that's why I don't see them. And that's also why in Arena, they are already in the C and D tier for Arena. Obviously, I know the two differ, but I just wanted to say that. Also in this video, I'm going to be including the top 4 healers, and I'm also going to be including the top 4 tank slash flag carrier. And the reason why I include tank and just not flag carrier is because there's a lot of times where you're just holding down a base, obviously in the games that aren't flag carrier. So because of that, I wanted to go over what that situation would be. So yeah, I wanted to cover that. I'm just going to say right from the jump, the 2 healers that aren't included in that top 4 are Holy Priest and Mistweaver Monk. So again, it's kind of the same thing. I don't really see them, and I don't want to misinterpret them or like give anything inaccurate. I know in terms of Arena, Holy Priest is at the bottom, and so is Mistweaver Monk. They need to be changed. Something needs to happen with them, and for the most part, they're at the bottom of the list. So because of that, they're not in this list at all. So now you know what's not going to be included, and then everything else should go pretty smoothly from here on out. I know a lot of people have wanted me to make this video, so I hope you guys do enjoy it. And yeah, that being said, before I start, I just want to say thank you for everyone that's been supporting my channel. I do greatly appreciate anyone that's been subbing to my page. So if you could keep doing that and keep supporting me, I would really greatly appreciate it. So, getting that out of the way, let's jump into it. Obviously, it's color coordinated here, so you can see melee is going to be red, blue is going to be caster. That way it's clear and easy to see. And yeah, I'm going to just do it all in order. I'm not going to do all the melee and then all the casters. I'm going to do B tier, A tier, S tier. As you can see, I don't have anything in the C tier. I don't think anything is that low. If I put you in the unranked and not included, that basically means that you were in C or D to begin with, and I didn't really find the need to like talk about it. So everything up is viable. I think everything from the B tier and up can be used. I do think you can be relevant, and that's pretty much it. You just some in the B tier you might not see as often, but they're definitely viable. You can use them. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. So that being said, let's jump into it, and we're going to start off with the B tier and the melee. So first up, we have Enhancement Shaman. Now, Enhancement may be placed in the B tier, but they are a great spec. Like, they really are a really good spec. I know, again, I know this is about RBGs, but in particular, they are a top 5 Arena spec. So definitely don't sleep on them, but obviously everybody knows there's a major difference between RBGs and Arena especially when it comes to 2v2s and 3v3s. They are really, really good. They are top 5. You can't sleep on them. They have really good burst, and they have excellent off healing, some of the best around. So because of that, they definitely are relevant. But like I said, BGs is different, and let's get into that. So, like I said, they may be in the B tier, but they're a great spec. Huge burst off of short cooldown. Great instant off healing on a limited resource. So that's kind of like I don't know, like that, since it's a limited resource, unlike Rhett Paladin, because Rhett Paladin has holy power, they could run out of mana. It kind of gives them a little bit of lower on the lower end, especially when it comes to RBGs. That's going to hinder them a little more than it would arena, because the battles in arena are much faster pace, and the games just end quicker rather than RBGs where the games are longer. So, solid mobility, obviously, with Ghost Wolf to flee or get to base while in combat. Other utility include their totems, obviously. You know, you got Tremor, Grounding, Healing Stream totems, baseline, so that's all good stuff. We have Doom Winds, Ascendance, and Shamanism. This is really one hell of a burst combination right now. It's one of the best for any melee. You could really blow someone up. So, all this hype, as I'm going on about them, well, why are they in the B tier? Well, to be honest, their biggest flaw really is their durability. Where in arena, in 2v2s and 3v3, they have like a little bit of leeway because of their off healing, and you know, it's a little bit more noticeable how much they could heal in an arena setting. They could also do way more kiting around a pillar and kind of stall the game a little bit. Where in RBGs, it's way different. Like, you know, for the most part, you could really get ganged up on, and it's a done deal. If a Death Knight grips you and pulls in an Enhancement Shaman, they're going to literally have 2 seconds to live, and it's over. There's no healing them out of that. They're done for. It's over. They don't have any sort of defensive cooldowns to really get them out of that situation. So, and for the most part, not always, for the most part, melees also tend to struggle a little bit more in BGs, because, you know, range DPS seem to be a little bit more noticeable. They sit in the back, they unload, and because of that, that kind of affects melees a little bit, especially if you're a squishy melee like Enhancement Shaman. You know, in arena, things are close, and you can really unload easier, and the odds are easier for you to connect. In RBGs, it's definitely a little bit less. So because of that, they are in the B tier. Now, next up, we have our first B tier for casters, and it's Destruction Warlock. Now, I do think Destruction Warlock is in every form, like when it's coming to dueling, arena, and RBGs. I think they are the second best Warlock in the game overall. I mean, I definitely think they're better than Demonology, but I do think that they're under Affliction in most categories. So, as of right now, like I said, they're definitely the second best, but people are definitely making it work. They have certain builds that are really working well, and if they're paired with the proper support, they really can do well. Chaos Bolt right now hits for insane damage. Destro seems to be a little bit more situational, where Affliction is more effective in multiple scenarios. Also, a lot of these specs and classes as a whole might get a heavy-handed nerf that really seems to be coming to a lot of specs ways. In my opinion, I think Warlock is a pretty safe class as a whole to not get a nerf. And one of those reasons is Chaos Bolt's damage is kind of going under the radar a bit. Like, obviously, everybody knows that it hits really hard, but compared to a lot of other complaints that Blizzard is definitely getting, I feel like this is going more under Blizzard's radar rather than player radar. So I've seen it hit for 15Ks against targets with 24 versatility. So, you know, it really might even see a little bit more of an uptick when nerfs come around, because once the nerf hammer comes, they might be considered even stronger. So if Destro in general is able to sit back and let these Chaos Bolts rip, the burst is pretty great, and it's good support for your team. If they're not focused, this could definitely sneak in a couple killing blows. So because of that, I have them in my B tier. Now, next up, we have Frost Mage. So, Frost Mage looked great during the beta. They also looked great even early on with like very early in Shadowlands, but things definitely have changed since then. They just don't pack as much of a punch as they did early on with Ice Lance. Like, they do still have some sort of hard hitting, but it's a little bit more RNG, and because of that, it's just not the same as what it was once predicted to be and what it once actually was early on. I do believe out of all these specs, though, they're probably the most likely to be buffed and see an uptick. Frost Mage can slow the pace of the game a bit, where that doesn't really work for Arena because it's so fast-paced right now, and the burst is just so heavy. In one burst combo, you could kill somebody. It actually works really well for RBGs. You know, they have good CC, a lot of slows. These slows could really help the melee on your squad. They really have, like, pretty much every move that they do is going to slow down their target, and because of that, that's going to really help out your team, especially the melees. And, you know, at the end of the day, we can't forget they have polymorph. They could spam it. And I do think in terms of RBGs, they're probably the second best mage. You know, fire is king in all forms, whether it's 1v1ing, RBGs or arena. I do think fire is king, but Frost Mage definitely does hold their own, and I think it shows a little bit more in RBGs what they can do because they can slow all their targets. So because of that, I have them in my B tier. Alrighty, so next up on our list for the A tier melee, we have Havoc Demon Hunter. So, Demon Hunter really has come a long way. You know, after BFA, they had the loss of all their borrowed power. It really was looking bad for them. But a lot of things have changed since then. People have made different builds, worked out a couple of kinks. They've also been buffed in terms of their damage, so things are definitely looking up for them. They have one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game right now with the hunt. I hate this move. Me personally, on my Druid, I have 25% versatility, and I've still been hit for 17k with this ability. It's just no joke. Their mobility is pretty much the best in the game. There's no way around it. They will always be attached to their target. Although their sustained damage and durability are on the lower end, the huge burst potential they have to offer, along with their mobility, really, you know, they'll make sure that they catch up to their target and unload on them. So they definitely deserve a spot in this A tier. They also have great instant CC right now with Chaos Nova, Imprison, and Fell Eruption. They have new additional PvP talent with Mortal Rush. This is another great add, giving them basically a mortal wound on the target when they use Fell Rush. So, you know, this opens up a little bit more opportunities for them and a little bit more utility for their team. I'm also going to get a little bit more into them later when it comes to flag carrying ability. It's pretty much unmatched, but we're going to go over that later. In terms of just DPS, we're talking here, not flag carrying ability. I have them in the A tier. So next up, we have Windwalker Monk. So, Windwalker Monk, what's not to say about them? They really are so good. Pretty much the best melee DPS in the game, what feels to be like by a solid margin as well. Not only good single target, blow-up burst style, but they also have insane sustained damage as well. Great mobility. Some of the best can easily chase their target down, and if they're weakened, they could really finish them off quickly with Touch of Death, basically one of the best execute style moves in the game. Where most specs have to wait about a minute or two to burst again, Windwalker is one of the few that could really keep the pressure on and keep sustained damage going. Rising Sun Kick, basically applies a mortal strike effect on the target, which is great utility. Fist of Fury brings great baseline damage, also great AoE CC with leg sweep. So again, all this good stuff. Why are they only in the A tier? Well, again, it's kind of the same type of issue with enhancement. They have durability issues, where Windwalker is definitely one of the best in arena, maybe even, you know, they might even be the best, if not top 2, especially in 2v2s. But it's way different in RBGs with a big group. If they get focused by multiple targets, they're going to get massacred whether they're getting healed or not. When it's an arena game, it's a little bit different because their healers guaranteed to heal them, so they don't have to worry about not being healed. It's like a guaranteed thing, and they only have to deal with 1 or 2 opponents. When you have 5 people attacking you and you don't know if your healer is definitely going to heal you because they're healing somebody else, that's going to be a big issue for them. They are still really good. There's no disputing that, but I think they shine more in arena than they do when it comes to RBGs. But there's no dispute that they are really good. A tier is still really good. You can still be very effective with all the damage that they bring, so there's no disputing that they are really good. I just have them in the A tier, whereas in arena they are top 2. So now for the A tier, for casters, I only have one in here, and it's going to be Elemental Shaman. We have another hybrid, of course. They use instant cast burst, which is so important. They're avoiding kicks. They have solid utility, great off heals. They have their totems, and they have Earth Shield. They really do offer a lot. They have really large burst. It comes off a Stormkeeper combining with Echoing Shock. This makes their lightning bolts hit for huge crits without ever having to really hard cast. Some of the utility that they bring to the table include, Grounding Totem, Lightning Lasso, which is really good for RBGs that can really hold somebody down and let the rest of the team unload. They have Pulverize and Tremor Totem. Originally in the beta, they were kind of all or nothing when it came to their Lava Burst, but things have definitely changed since then. They really have more to offer than just a Lava Burst ability. They really have a lot now, so that's good. But although they are one of the best specs for Arena, again, it's kind of the same thing. I do feel like for RBGs, they're just outside of the S tier. If not, they're bordering it. They're teetering it. So I just have them in the A tier, but they could be in the S tier. I think it could go back and forth. I think they are really, really good. There's no disputing that. I just feel like the casters that are in the S tier kind of do it a little bit better than Elemental Shaman does. I feel like they have a little bit more to offer. Or they're better at what their role is supposed to be. But that's not to say Elemental Shaman is not really good. Again, it's one of those things that I think Elemental Shaman is actually better for Arena than they are for RBGs. But again, they are really good. They're the only one in the A tier. And like I said, I also feel like they border the S tier. But as we get into the S tier now, I feel like all of them really do it a little bit better than Elemental Shaman does. So now let's get finally into our S tier. And we're going to start off with the melee as usual. Alright, so the first S tier melee class that I have to start off with is Arms Warrior. Now, Arms Warrior, when it comes to strictly solo situations, they do have a little bit of a hard time. So don't get caught out in the open. But in a team fight, which most RBG situations are full-fledged team fights, they truly are a force. They offer a lot of utility. And because of that utility, they make a great choice. And I'm going to explain a couple scenarios of what they can do on top of their utility. So, regardless of the recent nerfs that they've received to the Kyrian Covenant, which they aren't the only one to receive that, it was Kyrian as a whole, and this was specifically towards Pelagos, Arms Warrior remains a top 3 melee option. Especially when it comes to Arena, and even in RBGs, they are definitely very effective. They bring excellent offensive and defensive utilities, along with great support, better support than any melee in the game, other than maybe DKs in terms of RBG specifically. So, things like Mortal Strike, reducing healing effectiveness, Intervene, intercepting all melee and range attacks against allies for 6 seconds. This is really good to alleviate pressure off of your healer. We have Stormbolt, which is a ranged stun for 4 seconds, which is great for RBGs to hit it from afar. Can also combo these moves really well. So, for example, Intervene and Ignore Pain and Die by the Sword will greatly reduce your damage after you helped your healer with the Intervene. You also have Spell Reflection, which is another great piece because you're probably going to play more casters than melee in the majority of battles. And now you also have Blade Storm and Mortal Strike. So specifically, Blade Storm has this one PvP talent that for every target it hits, it applies Mortal Strike to all those targets. This is huge for team fights because now the healer is going to be way less effective, and that's why they are definitely in the upper tier for not only Arena, obviously everyone knows they're top 2 for Arena, but even in RBGs. The toolkit it brings to the table really is unmatched for any melee. And by the way, the thing that I was just talking about with Blade Storm and Mortal Strike is called Storm of Destruction. And again, it also has insane defensives when they're paired with a healer. Die by the Sword is another one that I didn't mention earlier when I brought up Ignore Pain. You also have Defensive Stance. So Defensive Stance, even though it does reduce your damage by 10%, you could still be a brick wall and hit hard. Your executes will still go off. You will be a finisher up on the enemy lines. You'll be the front line. And So now to also explain what they can do well with. So Death Knights in particular right now, they are a key. You definitely need at least one on every single team. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's Frost or Unholy. They really both have different playstyles. They benefit off of different scenarios. I'm going to get into Death Knight a little bit later. But in particular, when you have a Death Knight pulling in, and you have an Arms Warrior, a Rhett Paladin, a Windwalker Monk, once a Death Knight pulls a target in, that target is pretty much done unless they're a Paladin that has bubble. There's no healing through it. They get pulled in, you pop cooldowns, and you let them have it. Especially with Abomination Limb, you're holding them in even further, even longer. If a Druid, a Resto Druid has that, not Cyclone, Vortex, now they're also stuck in even further. An Arms Warrior is just going to decimate them when it comes to Blade Storm and then apply Mortal Strike. It's just a great thing to have. They're an excellent team player. There's no doubt about that with all the utility. And they have good sustained damage as well as nice burst. They have one of the better finishing moves in the game with Execute as well. So there's no question that they belong in the S tier. Now, next on our list is Rhett Paladin. Now, a couple things about Rhett Paladin that I'm going to bring up the negative before I go into the positives. The one sole weakness for Rhett Paladin, no matter what you're doing, other than maybe 1v1ing, is they do have a mobility issue. This is a little bit of an issue, especially when it comes from going to base while you're in combat. If you're in combat and can't get out, they really only have, even if you pick Cavalier in your talent build, you can only do that twice. Most of the time, they also pick the PvP talent that makes Blessing of Freedom increase their speed by 30%. But that being said, that's pretty much their only negative. Now let's get into all like their really good positive stuff, especially when it comes to RBGs. So similar to, as I mentioned with Death Knight, it's the same thing. I'm going to keep bringing up Death Knight now for this S tier, especially when it comes to melees, because it all plays hand in hand. RBGs, obviously Arena is a really team-oriented thing, but RBGs, if your team is in sync and you are making the call-outs and everything, the Death Knight is 100% necessary to start all of this. And the Rhett Paladin will flourish in these situations. Off of a pull, you have Heavy Wing Burst. You could Divine Storm multiple targets at once while the Death Knight's doing Abomination Limb. If you have a Resto Druid, which a Resto Druid where they actually shine is in RBGs because of Vortex. Again, it's keeping the enemies within a close proximity. That way the Rhett Paladin doesn't have to really worry about their mobility as much. All they have to worry about is doing what they do best and unloading on these targets. So, on top of that, they obviously are a hybrid spec. So they have the best heal in the game for the most part for any melee when it comes to Word of Glory. It pretty much acts as a lay on hands. If the enemy's health is low, it heals even more. It's pretty intense. They have good CC, insane burst off of a short cooldown, and excellent off healing, as I mentioned. And the biggest difference, as you heard me mention earlier about Enhancement Shaman, it's on a limited resource. Rhett Paladin is on an unlimited resource with Holy Power. So that's another huge added bonus. Rhett Paladin's also in one of those situations that when they don't have wings, they're just and this is the case for many specs. They're obviously not as effective. They still can put in work. They definitely can. But it's just not the same because the difference is when you pop wings, you could drop someone within, 2 seconds. Whereas when you're not, you really should more focus on being a solid off healer for your team. Especially because I've been seeing a lot of different comps right now where they try to only run 2 healers. And when that is the case, a Rhett Paladin is exactly what you need to fill the gaps for your off heals while you don't have wings. So it's kind of the same concept when it comes to Arena. And like I mentioned, off of a pull, when they're doing Divine Storm to hit everybody at once, even if they just pop wings, and they're doing Templar's Verdict. They're doing just fine. I'm blanking on the word right now. Final Reckoning, which is another huge damage move, especially if you pick that legendary, which is definitely the preferred for Rhett Paladin if you want to really uptick your damage. So they definitely belong in this spot. And now we'll get into a couple other things about them. Their support is not just off healing. It really isn't. They have a couple other things that, to me, are why they're so good in Arena, but it also applies in RBGs. So, first and foremost, we have Blessing of Sacrifice. Blessing of Sacrifice is really, really important. It's even more important in Arena, but it does serve its purpose here, and here's why. The majority of the time, when you're playing and they're talking in Discord, what is the main thing said when a fight starts? Target the healer, target the healer, target the healer. Right or wrong? Guess what? Blessing of Protection, not Blessing of Protection, I'm sorry. Blessing of Sacrifice, now you've just taken all that damage off of them, and now you're taking the brunt of it, and that's fine. Because now that healer can now focus on you and heal you. Not only that, you could give your Blessing of Protection, that's why I got it mixed up, because I was about to bring up that as well. So you could do that, and they could also help flag carriers with Blessing of Freedom. So, just all this utility can really, really help your team out, whether it's in base-style games like Rathia Basin or Battle of Gilneas. And then, as I mentioned, with flag carrying and Blessing of Freedom, they really do offer the support that's necessary. And not to mention, they hit really hard, one of the hardest hitters in the game. So, they definitely earn a place in the S tier. Now, next. Good old Death Knight. Okay, so Death Knight, whether it's Unholy or Frost, I'm going to go over both of them. They're both in the same position. I would probably say, for the most part, it depends on the team comp that you're going into, but Frost is better in the sense of Arena, but when we're really talking about RBGs, it's like neck and neck. I kind of feel like I'm going to go over both strong suits, and maybe in the comment section you guys could tell me what you think is better, because I could see it both ways. So let's start off with Unholy. So where Unholy really shines is in PvE. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because why do they shine in PvE? It's a lot of spreading dots and then doing that as a pressure. So, the difference between Arena and RBGs kind of relate similar to a raid, and the reason being is because so many enemies are within a close proximity, and you could really spread and cause a lot of pressure. If you're teamed up with a Shadow Priest, if your comp that you're going in with 10 people has a Death Knight that's Unholy, a Shadow Priest, and an Affliction Warlock, you know what? You're going to add a lot of pressure. And if that team's only running 2 healers, they're going to have a hard time, because that pressure is going to just add up, and it's going to be a mess for them. So that's where they shine a little bit differently. I would say their overall burst damage is less than Frost, but like I said, it works differently. But it's still very effective. Now, a couple other things to go over. You have Death Grip, and you have Asphyxiate. Those would probably be the majority choices, but Binding Sheet is also really, really effective, because when you do a pull and you have Abomination Limb on a cooldown, what's going to happen is you'll pull, and then you could do Blinding Sheet, slowing them in that proximity, and then your team could unload. A warrior could do Blade Storm, while Rhett Paladin does Divine Storm, and just things along those lines. Windwalker Monk could do Fist of Fury, and you guys could just let them have it, because they can't, once the pulls commenced and they're in the Blinding Sheet, they're kind of screwed. Another thing to mention is if they do have Abomination Limb, that's what they would use over Binding Sheet. So that's what's perfect about them. Like, it's either one or the other. Even though one's on cooldown, they could grip and do the other. So Asphyxiate is great. It's a good stun, but I would say that that's more made for Arena, where this is more for RBG style. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Unholy for the most part. A couple other things I guess I could go over with them. They definitely are more defensive. I feel like their Lynchborn into Death Coil healing is a little bit more effective. Their anti-magic shell seems to be a little bit better. They have anti-magic zone, which is another great support for your team. That can't go unnoticed. Like, that's even better for RBGs than it is for Arena, especially if you're going up against really caster-heavy opponents, which sometimes that can happen. You could go in and play almost all casters. I've seen it happen. It's annoying, and that's a good way to counter that. So that being said, for them. Oh, and I guess I will also mention this because I brought this up earlier about pets. They benefit greatly from their pets, and you want to know why it's not as bad as like Survival Hunter or BM Hunter or even Demonology Warlock, because all of those, once their pet dies from AoE that wasn't even intended for them, in order for you to really res those pets back, it's going to take you a lot more time. Now, obviously, when you die, you could do it at the graveyard, but now you're wasting time doing that instead of rushing to where you need to be, where the Death Knight can do it instantly and not even think about it. So that's another really important added bonus. Now, let's talk about Frost. So, for the most part, everything that I said is about the same. The same techniques with the grip, Abomination Limb. You're always going to want to be Necro Lord for Death Knight. That's why I keep saying Abomination Limb. But here's the difference. Frost Death Knight is way easier to play, and their durability is a little bit less. But here's the really big difference. Where Unholy Death Knight spreads, and they're like topping the damage charts because of their spread damage, Frost is kind of more made for an arena style where they will pop cooldowns and just bang you, done, you're over. They will blow up a target, especially with backup. They just hit for much higher crits, obliterate, frost strike, really heavy moves. You got Howling Blast. It's a little bit more burst style. But in my personal opinion, I feel like when it comes to dueling, when it comes to RBGs, and when it comes to 2v2 situations, I think Unholy Death Knight is better. But for 3v3s, that's where Frost shines. Not to say that Frost isn't effective, because like I said, it hits way harder, but that's kind of why they're made for the arena style, because it's all about their burst. And that's really what Arena's about. If your team pops all cooldowns, you decimate a guy while the healer's CC'd, that's what that's about. So I kind of give the edge to Unholy in this situation. But most of the moves are kind of similar, like, anti-magic zone, shell, all that stuff. And obviously you have Death Grip, Abomination Limb, and Sheet. So because of that, they definitely still are in the S tier. Okay. And now next on our list, Feral Druid. So there's a couple things about Feral Druid that I'm going to get into later, similar how I mentioned it to you guys with Havoc Demon Hunter. It'll be a surprise. You'll definitely hear about me talk about that later. But now I'm going to be strictly talking about DPS. Obviously, they do flag carry. We're going to get into that part in a little bit. So let's talk about the DPS and why they belong in this class for this. Alright, so let's jump right into Feral. If you're a Druid right now, you're probably having a great time, whether you're doing arena, dueling, RBGs. They're pretty much the jack of all trades. They do everything really well. Due to all their specs being viable, or even for the most part, they could be OP, Feral is an excellent hybrid melee. Has instant burst with Ferocious Bite, and can have close to one-hit KO ability right now. Especially when you have the conduit with all the bleeds on the target, you really can hit heavily with Ferocious Bite with a 5 combo point hit. They also bring excellent sustain and spread damage with their bleeds. It's pretty much one of the best sustained damage around. They really can just go from target to target to target, spreading it all very efficiently. And it does a lot of damage depending on the legendary you pick. This isn't the preferred one, but I do feel like it's better for RBGs particularly. It's called Circle of Life. It's increasing the duration of how fast your bleeds tick, which is actually really huge to add pressure to all of them. Great off-healing potential, and can be done instantly on proc. The proc could also be done on entangling roots. This is really, really important right now, because if you're flag carrying as Feral, you can now use that proc and stop somebody when it's a single target on you, which is great. Another thing to also keep in mind if you're flag carrying while in travel form, I would say there's one of two options to pick in the level 35 row, which is Mighty Bash, Mass Entanglement, and then you also have Heart of the Wild. Heart of the Wild is great for some healing, which is really, really good healing, but as long as you have healers around you, you shouldn't have to stress that as much as taking Mass Entanglement. Now, this will just literally root everybody around you, and then you could just keep it going, whether you have Sprint, Roar, obviously you have Travel Form, just a lot of mobility. It's really, really good. And then not only all that, you also have Leap with your cat form. You can leap towards the target. You have bear form charge. Bear form is another great utility to have with their incapacitation at a base. To just basically, if someone's about to get the flag and there's multiple targets around, not the flag, like take over a base, you could literally just incapacitate all of them at once. It's really, really great utility. Obviously, while in bear form, your armor goes up, your health goes up. It's really, really good right now. And on top of all that, as gear is becoming more and more efficient and you're getting a higher and higher item level, that means bear form's getting more armor and they're also getting more health. So it's just becoming even more tanky, similar to how like a Warlock is right now. Their health pool just keeps growing based upon how strong gear is getting. And yeah, they're also one of the best at from getting from base to base efficiently while in combat, obviously because of travel form and cat form. So they could really just excel when it comes to base style games like Arathia Basin. And they're pretty hard to kill, whether they are in a flee style and just running away and or holding it down in bear form. It's really just a lot to take them down. And they could also alleviate a lot of pressure off of some healers with their instant proc regrowth. They also have Cyclone if they had to use it in a certain situational fight. And as of right now, I do think they belong in the S tier. Obviously, right now, I really only briefly covered flag carrying. We're going to get into that later. But yeah, even with when you include that on top of the DPS potential, they are in the S tier. Similar to how I went over with Havoc, but Havoc Demon Hunter, we're going to really get into that later. And now, finally, Sub Rogue. So, this really, I feel like this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Sub Rogues here, even though they've been thrown the Nerf Hammer, it really doesn't matter. That Nerf Hammer just made them kind of where they're supposed to be instead of just going off on their opener. It just took it down one notch, and they still have one of the best openers in the game. Obviously, if you do BGs, you do understand that when you're holding down a couple bases, your rogue on your team, which is highly recommended to have at least one rogue, can now go and sneak up and steal a base and, you know, sneak cap. This is really, really important. Doing that alone automatically puts them in the S class. Obviously, Feral has the same potential to do that, but the difference is Rogue can then vanish. They could do Cloak of Shadows. They could do a couple things to like get out of that situation and then try to do it again later. Whereas Feral, once they get out of stealth, it's not the same. Feral is better at holding down a base, however, especially if you're picking the correct stat lines in terms of playing BG specifically. Obviously, it would be different stat lines when you're doing Arena, but you can make your Feral Druid very, very bulky to hold down a base, whereas Sub is more the sneaky, elusive style, go in, steal a base, and then even in a big open fight, they always are important when it's a big, big fight of 5-on-5 or more. They could easily pinpoint the healer, target it out, and destroy it. This is a big, big deal. They're basically the healer killer, or at least lock them down and CC chain them enough while your team comes in and eliminates all the other threats. So that, to me, is just those couple things alone automatically have to make them in the S tier. Sub Rogue right now is one of those things that they're pretty much S tier in just about everything, or very, very, very close. Like when it comes to world PvP, when it comes to RBGs, when it comes to arena dueling, everything, they just really are top notch. You really can't go wrong with having one. I feel like every single team that you have, just as much as you need a Death Knight, I feel like you need one Rogue. Those two are just so important right now. And if you have both, you should be doing pretty well for yourself. So no doubt about it, definitely make sure that you have one Rogue on your team. Alright, we finally made it, our final S tier, and obviously it's caster, so let's get into it. We start off with Shadow Priest. So, Shadow Priest right now is, at least in terms of arena, they are definitely a top 3, and for RBGs, it's no different. They belong in the S tier, at least in my opinion. As of right now, they seem to be like pretty much leading the pack as the hybrid class in particular. I'm not talking straight damage or anything like that, but as a hybrid, they seem to be one of the best, at least for casters. You know, they have excellent sustain damage, strong burst, insane off heals. They have an impenetrable ability and dispersion and greater fade. So, you know, those are both really, really good and could get you out of a lot of tough situations. A healer will give you just enough time to get you back up. This pretty much makes it as well-rounded as you can be. And that's really not even including the CC capability that they really offer. They have a fear, they have a silence, they have a stun. So basically that's just a big 3. If you have one of each, you really are just a massacre. When you have Unfurling Darkness and Damnation, it's really, really easy dot, apply, and spread. This helps Shadow Priest quickly spread their dots, causing a lot of pressure and havoc for healers. This is even more so in RBGs. It is true in arena, but think about it like this. Now you're having all these additional targets when it comes to RBGs. This is going to make healers' life a living hell because you're just adding dots on everybody. If you have a comp that has a Shadow Priest and an Affliction Warlock, pretty much those two, there are exceptions, but those two tend to always be on the upper end of damage because of just spreading. Their spread dots, just it's ticking on everybody. It's a big, big deal. And not only that, Shadow Priests also have a nice steady burst. You know, Unfurling Darkness does a lot of damage. You have Void Eruption along with Power Infusion, gives them a nice setup-based burst explosion. All this makes Shadow Priest definitely a top contender for RBGs. You also have Mind Games, which is the best single target Covenant ability in the game, in my opinion. And let's not forget all their solid off heals. Shadow Mend is a really, really great off heal. It's probably one of the better ones for any non-healer in the game. I would say for the most part, as a caster, non-healer, they might be the best off healer. Obviously for melee, I would say it's Rhett Paladin, but for caster, it's Shadow Priest. And yeah, just the dot pressure that they offer, all that damage, they definitely belong in the S tier. And next, we have Balanced Druid. I feel like Balanced Druid is also one of those things that when you when you go into a match and you see a Balanced Druid, a lot of people want to target it immediately because if you really don't respect them, you're going to really have a hard time. Their damage needs to be respected, especially when they're popping all of their cooldowns. They really, really can just destroy people. Star Surge could really crit from anywhere between 10 to 15k multiple times. If they're using Night Fae and they do Invoke, they can literally get 4 Star Surges off within that Invoke period, if not even a full moon, which is a guaranteed kill. They're just insane. And again, here we have another hybrid. I would say that their off heals are definitely a little bit less than Shadow Priest, but their off healing is still pretty solid. Again, they also offer Mass Entanglement, which could really help flare carriers out with their utility. Their cooldown burst always really needs to be looked out for. They also have Starfall, which could cause a lot of pressure for everybody that's in a large group fight, which obviously is really common. Starfire is another one, AoE. You're going to pick Twin Moons. It's going to hit multiple targets. You're spreading your dots around. So it's not only are you causing dot pressure, but you're also causing a lot of heavy pressure with Starfall and Starfire. It's almost guaranteed that you kind of need one. They're really, really that good. And then, like I said, you not only have strong off heals on a limited resource, but you do have good CC. With the mass entanglement, then you have regular roots to begin with. You have incapacitation with your bear form, which gives you the added durability that you definitely will need. You will be targeted a little bit more often. I feel like for the most part, when they're not going for the healer, if there's a Moonkin around, they are targeted, so the bear form definitely gives them a little bit of an edge. That's why Night Fae definitely is the preferred choice when we're talking about RBGs, because of the chance to get multiple Star Surges and full Moon procs within that period. But if you are Kyrian, it is kind of nice to get a little bit extra durability with the Vial of Serenity, so that's good. And yeah, I mean, along with all the pressure, not just from their big bursts, but from their dots, it's a lot to deal with. And right now, this is one of those classes, just to mention, I do feel like the Night Fae ability is probably going to be nerfed because it's just so strong. Full Moon and all those Star Surges within an instant is just way too much. But as of right now, it's not nerfed, so they 100% belong in this S tier. Now, we have Affliction Warlock. So, similar to Shadow Priest, as I mentioned, Affliction is going to be one of the top damage dealers. If you have a good geared out Affliction Warlock, they are going to be on one of the upper ends of damage. They just put their dots on all their targets, it spreads, and it does massive damage. Not only that, they have something that Shadow Priest doesn't have, which is really important, and it's called Unstable Affliction. Not only does Unstable Affliction probably deal the most damage game in and game out, but when you have it on your target and then the healer's trying to dispel it, or they dispel it by mistake, now they're also dealing, they're getting damage taken for taking it off that target. Not only that, excellent CC. They got Fears, they got Horrifies. They also have Gateway, so that way that can help your flag carrier go from place to place quicker. This one is especially important for Eye of Storm. Obviously, for Warsong Gulch and Twin Peaks, it's important as well. But in Eye of Storm, if you put the gates in the proper locations, you will really help your team with the utility and the speed that they offer. Right now, because gear is becoming more and more, it's becoming better over time, their health pools are becoming larger, which makes them even harder to kill. They do have a problem against certain melees, but again, they're kind of hard to catch. They kite a lot. If playing Night Fae, you got Soul Shape, Demonic Circle, Gateway. This makes them hard to catch, and it's really going to help their team in general. Their main burst is solid as well. It comes from Dark Soul. They summon their Dark Glare, Malefic Rapture. It's all solid burst. They work really, really well with other casters. If you're playing with a Shadow Priest, their dots being spread and put together as a unit is just going to be a lot of pressure for the healer. So yeah, because of all that, I don't see how they could just not be in this S tier. Next, we got Marksman Hunter. So, Marksman Hunter, when did that nerf happen? It wasn't too long ago. They got nerfed kind of recently, but they still just deal so much damage. And I feel like where they may lack a little bit in terms of arena, that just does not apply in BGs at all. And the reason being is because they get to stay back, and if they aren't targeted, they're gonna unload. They bring so much pressure. It's not dot style pressure, it's real big burst pressure, and it's kind of some of the best that you can get in terms of a BG. They'll sit in camo, they'll pop out, and once they pop out, they're going to unload, they're going to do true shot, they're going to let off aim shots, they're going to do rapid fire. They really just have an arsenal of moves. They'll have Chimera shot, which hits multiple targets. They're just unloading, and if you let them sit in the back too long, they're going to destroy your healers, and that's a big problem. And they have the most likely to hit your healers because they could sit back the furthest with snipe shot. So it's just really, really a big deal. They also are surprisingly elusive. They have disengage. Not only that, they have post haste, which increases their speed after disengage. You got aspect of the turtle. Their Fiend Death, if you pick the proper legendary, it'll take your dots off. Then you could pop out, go back into camo, reset the fight, sit and eat while you're in camo, come out, and then just rinse and repeat. They're nuisance in Eye of Storm. My God, are they a nuisance? If they sit at the end and they're just unloading towards the flag, they are excellent. And surprisingly, they can get the job done when it comes to flag carrying too, because whether it's just passing it off to the person that they need to pass it off to, I just think that there's no question that they are in this S tier, especially for BGs. They just have to be here. And finally, it pains me to say it, but Fire Mage is #1 in the game for casters. I would say in almost everything. For casters, right now, Fire Mage is just the top dog. They're so good. They're so annoying. My God, they're so annoying. But what are you going to do? It is what it is. So let's get into why. It's actually funny because originally, like, when Shadowlands was first coming out and in the beta, they lost all their borrowed power, and everyone thought for sure that Frost was going to be the top dog, but that's definitely not the case at all. Things have changed, and they are definitely still the #1, not only #1 mage, but I think they are the #1 caster in the game, whether it's arena or RBGs. They are really, really good, especially when you allow them to sit back and just unload Greater Pyroblast. Right now in this top row, no, actually no, because there's another one. They are one of the only pure DPSs that's like in the S tier to begin with in most categories. Good consistent damage, excellent burst damage. It's pretty much the best off of cooldown. They have 3 spell schools as well, so they don't have to worry about getting kicked as much, because if you get kicked on a damage spell, meaning your fire move, now you can do polymorph. If you get kicked on your polymorph, you can still deal damage. Even if you get kicked, if you get kicked on anything and you don't have fire and you don't have arcane for some reason, then you could still do Ring of Frost, which is again an excellent CC to have, especially when it's coming to RBGs. Ring of Frost is really important. And not only that, they are very, very durable and they're elusive. You pick Shimmer, you got 2 blinks. They have I'm blanking on the name. They have that shield where they get all their shields. I'm blanking on the name. The legendary. They get all their shields on at once. It's really, really strong. Makes them durable. They also have the possibility to pick the conduit that Ice Block gets their health to full. And for the most part, a lot of people pick Night Fae because that puts them in the cocoon, and then they have their last second effort to be healed while they're in the cocoon. So just all that put together just makes them great. And we haven't even really went over the damage yet. They are the hardest hitters in the game, and it's pretty much not even close. When they pop Combustion, you better look out, because they're going to deal heavy, heavy damage. They could take out multiple targets, especially if they're in the back and not being noticed. It doesn't even matter if you're healing. They will kill through the heals. They are that strong right now. There's actually a video coming out. There's a video that came out recently that explains something that they do, and I think it's the most cheesiest thing in the game, and really something needs to be done about it. Whether they polymorph the target or someone else stuns the target, if it's on a single target in particular, they pop Radiant Spark and Combustion and then drop a Meteor. Meteors, on average, when that happens, is hitting for over 20 Ks. Following it up with a Greater Pyro for another 20 K, you will just eliminate anybody, even healers. I mean, unless you're a Holy Paladin and you got the chance to bubble, you're pretty much as screwed as you can get. And yeah, they just are really a force to be reckoned with. They just have too much to offer and too much damage to go around. So, we finally finished our tier list when it comes to casters and melees. I hope you enjoyed that segment. And now we're going to get into the next step, which is the top 4 healers and the top 4 flag carriers. So first I'm going to start off with the healers, and I'm going to start from the bottom up. I know it says 4, but I have like some ties, or what I consider to be ties, so that's just kind of the way I'm going to do it. Obviously, you might feel different about the ties, but, that's why it's based on my opinion. So, first up, I'm just going to do all of it at one time. We have Discipline Priest and Holy Paladin. Now, I know if everyone who watched the tournament recently, for Arena, that is for Arena, Holy Paladin right now is the best Arena healer in the game. I think it's hands down. They're the best. And honestly, even though I have them tied for 3 here, they could very well be #1. So seriously, all these healers here, and this for RBGs in particular could be one. I think Holy Paladin for Arena is hands down the best healer. I think they're in the league of their own. But let's get into a little bit why they're in the league of their own. So first off, they're really just made for this meta to begin with. Originally thought that they weren't going to be viable at all, but that has really been proven to be wrong. They don't have to ever really cast. It's pretty much all instant cast, and it's high enough healing that it doesn't need, like, it's so good healing without casting. Let's put it like this. Their worst heal is pretty much the Resto Druid's best heal. So their Flash of Light costs 2200 mana. It heals for about 3000, and that's Resto Druid's only cast heal. So just to put it in perspective of like what their worst heal is compared to a Resto Druid's best heal. So they are just really, really good. They offer big burst off of low cooldown and don't require much mana. Even in a pinch without mana, they can gain holy power through other means and then just let off Word of Glories, and Word of Glory can pretty much heal you for half to all of your health depending on the situation. When they pop wings, they pretty much are indestructible. When they pop wings, they will heal anybody out of anything. Also right now with Divine Favor, the only time Holy Paladins are casting at all right now is when they use Divine Favor. It's only a 25-second cooldown too. It's increasing your healing of Holy Light or Flashlight by 100% and increases the speed by 60%. So you're pretty much only doing Holy Light when that procs, when that comes off a cooldown, and it'll heal you from 1 health all the way up to full. That's how strong it is right now. It's insane. They have the best throughput healing in the game, it feels like. And they also have, and they stack all crit. That way, when all that stuff happens, they're going to crit you for all your health back. Not only that, they have really, really surprisingly strong damage. I would say that they're probably the second strongest damage dealer for a healer. Depending on what you pick, you should be picking the Kyrian ability for RBGs to begin with, because of Divine Toll, you'll get a solid AoE healing on top of your beacons. Your beacons are your main AoE healing, but then Divine Toll is a really, really good AoE heal, especially when you're doing it with wings. And then now we could get into their defensive abilities. Obviously, they have Bop, Blessing of Protection. Normally, you choose the PvP talent where you get 2 Bops and 2 Blessing of Protections, and then you pick the talent with 2 Cavaliers, so you're getting 2 charges of everything, which is really important. Obviously, you have Divine Shield. When you pick Kyrian, you have your Vial to get your bleeds off. And yeah, they're just so good right now. They're literally just made for the meta. And you might even be able to sneak in a couple kills when you pop wings and do Hammer of Wrath, I'll tell you that much. And then they have other really important defensive abilities too. You know, they have Aura Mastery, which really makes Concentration Aura and Devotion Aura really, really important. It'll stop big incoming damage. Devotion Aura with Aura Mastery decreases damage by 15%, and then Concentration Aura is going to make it that you can't even be interrupted by like kicks and things like that. These are really, really important utility for your teams. And then not only that, if you need to get from someplace quicker, they are offering you Crusader Aurora, which makes your mount speed 20% faster. This is another really important thing. And they really, really have solid mana efficiency. And like I mentioned earlier, they don't even need to worry about it because they can just heal with Holy Power. So yeah. Oh, and one other thing to mention: if you're not picking Kyrian for some reason and you want to deal extra damage, I highly recommend that you go Venthyr. There's Venthyr variants right now, which is making your Hammer of Wrath hit for 10k. So if you pop wings and then just keep letting the Hammer of Wrath off, you'll hit for 10ks and you'll take out people. So yeah, as of right now, I just have them in the 3A, 3B, but don't get it mistaken, they can very easily be number 1. Now, let's get into Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest, I would say their only sole weakness right now is that they have a little bit of a mana efficiency problem, but they are still really, really really solid. And their mana efficiency is low when you're comparing it to like Holy Paladin or you're comparing it to Wrestle Shaman, but still it is really good. They are the best offensive healers right now, I would say. They just offer a lot, not only in damage with Mind Games, even Penance deals a lot of damage. Their dots deal a lot of damage, and they heal through Atonement, so obviously they need to deal a lot of damage to get the proper heals off. And yeah, they just work well with so many different comps. Like, you really just can't go wrong with them. Currently, Disc Priest, the offensive healing that they offer is, Power Infusion, Thought Steal, Dark Archangel. These are really insane offensive utilities for your team. And yeah, like I mentioned, Mind Games, the strongest, the strongest single target ability by any Covenant ability, in my opinion. And yeah, they also can this for the most part isn't, it never goes on the leaderboards or anything like that, but they do shield every single target, and obviously it does heal on the initial, but the damage that it's absorbing isn't going on the leaderboards. So it's one of those like unspoken about things, and it is really important. It's also increasing your movement speed by 30% when you put it on the target, which is definitely helpful in many situations when it comes to RBGs. So now number 2, Resto Druid. Now, before I really get into Resto Druid here, when you're talking about Arena specifically, Resto Druid is not number 2, so don't get it twisted in any way, shape, or form. Right now, Holy Paladin is the best in Arena by far. They're probably even better than Resto Druid in here, but you'll see why. I'm just giving a debate of why Resto Druid is good. Disc Priest is better, and Wrestle Shaman is better than Resto Druid. But in an RBG setting, things are a little bit different, because what's good about Resto Druid? Everybody knows this. They have solid AoE healing. Their mana regen is god-awful, but they are really good at AoE healing. And on top of all that, they use HOTS. So if you have a Holy Paladin healing your team, and they're not topping off the heals, guess what? Resto Druids can put HOTS on everybody, and then it'll just top everybody off. They also have Tranquility, which is a great AoE heal, keeping everybody up. So they do have a lot of things to offer. In a pinch scenario, if they have to pick up the flag, they actually are solid flag carriers as well. That's obviously a rare situation. You don't want your healer to be running the flag, but if it had to be done, it could be done. And yeah, like I said, they really shine when it comes to their HOTS for AoE healing. That's their strong suit. They could easily apply their HOTS on all their allies and top everybody off. Great mobility to get from base to base, or even run from the grave. They have sprint, roar, travel form, all that good stuff. They could constantly spam cyclones on the opposing team's healer, or they could stop an incoming burst by spamming a really strong DPS. And that's when it's coming down to key fights at the wire for taking over bases. They have okay defensive abilities. They have Iron Bark. They have Bark Skin for themselves. And then, of course, they have Thorns. Circle of Life legendary. Again, this is a solid RBG legendary because it's increasing your hot ticks by 15%. So it's really just making sure everyone's getting those heals faster, and it's more efficient. They really are a perfect complement to other healers. Normally in Arena, they have to rely heavily on Nature's Swiftness and Swiftmen, and when they're on cooldown, they are stuck in Arena. But that's what's the beauty about RBGs. They have another healer to really help them out, and because of that, they don't have to just worry about those being on cooldown. They could just really focus on being a complementary healer. That's why I have them in the 2 spot. And then, obviously, they also have Bear Form for Frenzied Regen to get out of a pinch, and, that Incapacitation as well to help them out. So, that's why I have them in that spot. But, like I said, they're more of a complementary healer. They're not your main healer. And lastly, Resto Shaman. So, Resto Shaman right now, they just offer a lot. They really do. They offer a lot. So, like I said, they bring a lot to the table. Let's start off with the mana. By far, the best mana regen in the game. You got Water Shield, and obviously Mana Totem. Even if it's on a 3-minute cooldown, it doesn't matter. It's still great mana efficiency. It's really not even close when it comes to mana conversation. They are the top dog. The longer the match, the more likely they are to win, I feel like, when that's coming in terms of Arena. So, kind of, it doesn't apply as much for here, but if the match is really going long, as a Resto Druid would run out of mana, the Resto Shaman definitely won't run out of mana. They have great passive healing with Earth Shield. Obviously, you want to combo that with Earth and Harmony Legendary. You have 2 charges of Healing Stream Totem. great instant heals as well. You know, you got Riptide, that's one of the best. The utility they offer with their totems is really sickening. You know, you got grounding, tremor, healing stream, earthen wall, spirit link, and that's not even all of them, but like you get the point that I'm getting at here. It's just a lot. You know, also really solid mobility and kiting ability with Ghost Wolf. Ascendance is also great to counter incoming burst. If you time it properly, you could always counter it with Ascendance. And lastly, it could really play with just about anything. Like, it just kind of just always works with anything at all, whether it's, you know, you have cleaves on your team, casters, melees. They're kind of like, they really just work well with everything. And then they also have solid AoE healing. Not just with healing stream, as I mentioned, with the passive healing, but chain heal is another solid heal as well. So, now, it's the big time. We're at the end of our video. We're going to go over flag carriers to end this off. So, I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to start with number 1. I know all the other time I was starting from the bottom and going up, but this time I really want to go over the number 1 first. We have Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now, as you noticed earlier, when I was going over the melees and DPS, that was Havoc Demon Hunter. They are good. That's why they're in the A tier. This is a whole different story. In terms of flag carrying, Vengeance Demon Hunter is the best, and we'll get into why. As of now, pretty much Demon Hunter, ever since Demon Hunter has been introduced, and now including in Shadowlands, they are the best flag carriers. They have been for a while. Specifically, we're talking about Vengeance here. By far, the best mobility of all tank specs in the game. As of now, Demon Hunter also seems to have the best self-sustain healing. They take a little bit more damage, but their sustain healing is by far the best, it seems like. When it comes to holding down a base, not only can they hold it down like any other tank would, but they have solid damage. So like out of the ones I'm about to go over, their damage seems to be much higher than the other tanks. They can burst enemies down, especially when they enter their demon form. And then you're going to notice more and more the higher rating that you climb, the more likely you are to see at least one Vengeance Demon Hunter for the flag carrying. So just keep an eye out for that. You will see it more and more often. Now, number 2. We got Guardian Druid and Feral Druid. I'm going to go over both of them at the same time. I did explain Feral a little bit, but I'm going to go over both of them right now. So, like I said, I'm grouping them together. As of now, I'd say they're both just under Demon Hunter. Both have excellent mobility. You know, sprint, roar, travel form, all great stuff. This is even more so for Guardian, and here's why. They have a PvP talent, making their travel form even faster. It's pretty much going as fast as a mount. That's a big deal to have. And then even if they're getting hammered while they're in that travel form, quick switch to bear form, increased armor, increased health. You do your little incapacitation move, and you switch back to travel form and leap and keep it on going. On row 35, they also have 2 great options for carrying, which is Mass Entanglement to root all surrounding enemies, and then you have Heart of the Wild for additional healing. I think in particular, because your healer should always be with your flag carrier, Mass Entanglement is the way to go. I do think Guardian can hold down a base much better than Feral, but I'm also just linking in Feral because there are situations where the Feral might have to carry. Both can also solo hold down a base with ease, bear form, increased durability, armor, and health, and these health pools just seem to be getting larger and larger. And now lastly, we're going to go over Prot Paladin. Now, the thing about Prot Paladin is I wouldn't like consider them, flag carrier, ha ha ha, like that's a joke. Like there's a reason why I'm going over Prot Pal here, and you'll see why. So lastly, we have them, and where Prot Paladin really shines is when it comes down to holding down a base in particular. I wouldn't say as much flag carrying. That's why I'm really talking about them. So they have insane self-healing on an unlimited resource. Again, holy power with their Word of Glories, which is great. You know, they could probably, out of all these, they could withstand the most damage with plate, shield for their blocks. They also offer a talent where healing them reflects 10% of that heal to all their allies for great support. This is good for big group fights and for base holding. That's why I have them in this list. It's not so much about flag carrying, but most of the time you do have one tank slash prot, and that's just why I'm bringing them up in particular. Their mobility out of these three is definitely by far the lowest. There's no disputing that, but they can hold down a base very well, and you know they have great off-healing support. So I just figured it was worth mentioning. And that's about it that I'm going to say about them. There's really nothing else to cover here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would greatly appreciate any like or sub to my channel. I did work really hard on this one. I know everybody wanted this video, so that's why I kind of wanted to take my time and make sure I had all the correct information. I know there's going to be people saying, oh, but this class is so good, and this class, and this spec is so good. But at the end of the day, everything can't be in the S tier. You know how stupid the list would be? So I tried to spread it out accordingly and make it as like proper as I could. So I hope you guys do enjoy the video, and as always, thank you for tuning in.